All right, everybody. My guest on the show today is the amazing Bob Conlin. Bob Conlin knows more about me than most of my other guests, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. So, Bob, and if you know Bob at all, which you are going to get to know Bob, this is so on brand. He's a dad, adorable little boy, which we're going to talk about. He's a husband, and he's a men's coach. I just want to say up front, I got to know Bob a little bit earlier this year. And then we had a conversation, and I've been a part of an amazing experience that Bob has created called Alchemy of Men. And it's a men-specific group. So it's me and some other men. We get together for an hour and a half a week, and we get to be men and talk about things that are important to us, being fathers, being husbands. How are things going in our business? So I just want to say that up front, that's how I know Bob. So, he's heard me talk about some pretty private things, which is good. I also know some things about Bob because he shares with us. He's part of the group as well. So, yep. Bob, I'm so glad we're able to make this happen. I can't wait to have this conversation with you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, man. It's great to be here, and I can't wait to share with your audience all the stuff that I learned about you the last couple months. So
perfect. That is why I invited Bob, so that he can publicly shame me.
Yeah. I would say which listeners goes against one of the core ethical tenets of being a coach, which is confidentiality. I would never do that. Yeah.
Well, we don't respect that here on the podcast. We throw all ethics. Well, the other thing that Bob and I were joking about is Bob is also the president of the International Coaching Federation Chicago chapter, which means if he was to break ethics, that would be an actual problem. For me, not as much. For you, you're actually leading a pretty large organization.
Yeah, I think the coaching police would come after me and arrest me. So yeah, for sure.
You'd get called down to Lexington, Kentucky for a tribunal. Like, are we going to kick you out or not from this volunteer position?
Yeah.
I love that. All right, Bob, I know we have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it.
Yeah.
What is something that you nerd out about?
Dungeons and Dragons, the first thing that came to my mind. I didn't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. I, even as a little kid, I've always been drawn to like the mystical, the evil, like the dark, the mysterious. And like as a 47-year-old grown man, like one of the things I love to do is play Dungeons and Dragons. I haven't done it in a little while. I want to be upfront with your listeners about that. But pre-COVID and even into a little bit of COVID, it was like 5-6 guys of us would get together. Usually once, twice a month, and we'd play a 4, 5, 6 hour game of Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
Are you a member of the Hellfire Club?
I'm not. Oh, it is kind of apropos now, right? Thanks to Stranger Things, but no. But in high school, my love of Dungeons and Dragons was formed early in those formative years in high school. A couple of friends and I would get together. We actually played in a heavy metal band as well, which is, of course.
Wait,
right?
Are you the grown version of Eddie Munson?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll send you a picture. Maybe you can include it in some of the show notes. Someone just posted like a band photo from the band I was in when I was 14. Where we got our long hair and we're all like looking tough and stuff. It's like hilarious. Yeah.
That's cool, man. This is apropos. My podcast that came out today. So we're recording this on August 17th. My episode that came out today is a gentleman named David Carpenter. And he's a former Broadway producer, and he's the CEO of a company called Gameotics. And they put on live. One of the things they're doing, he's in Scotland right now. They're doing a live like theater production of kind of a Dungeons and Dragons style theater production. And when you're in the audience, Gameotics, it's an app company, and you get to participate on your phone.
Wow, how cool!
So it tells you like how do you roll, and so here's what's happening. So you'll have to list. The episode is out today. It's really fascinating. I'm actually going to have him on my tech podcast to talk about the business aspect of it, the technology of it. But it's such a cool combination of all the things he learned doing Broadway shows. And he produced some pretty successful shows to now he's a tech founder.
Nice.
Doing app things it's like interactive theater, but with like a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy flair. So second time this has come up this week.
Yeah, it's like choose your own adventure, which is essentially done. It's choose your dungeon master's adventure because they're leading the thing. But I love the interactive nature of that because yes, it's about playing the game, but there's so much about just getting together with friends and doing something like fun and creative and constructive. It was a, place, and of course it was all guys because no women would want to be near us in that basement playing Dungeons and Dragons. But
no,
it was a bunch of guys getting together, having fun, playing games, talking about stuff that matters, and it's really good.
Yeah, I do that, but I do it online through my PS5 or my Xbox.
Nice.
XS. I'm a huge gamer, and then we have a mutual friend, Christina and Mary Trotches, and I talked about this on their podcast, which is anime focused, but we actually had a video game episode. I said to them, I know nothing about anime, but you want to talk about Dark Souls or Bloodborne, or we'll be here all day. I'm a big RPGer, but electronic version of it.
Yeah, cool.
Which is actually the machine running in the background of video games. It's all D&D based, like around the rolls and all that stuff. Super cool, Bob.
Yeah.
So what's something that's inside of your comfort zone that other people are like, no, besides sitting in a smelly basement with other 14-year-old dudes playing Dungeons and Dragons? Because we know that was not the place that you were working on the romantic prowess. Yeah. Very likely.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So something that's in my comfort zone that might not be in someone else's.
Yeah.
Man, there's, I think like with the work I do, as a coach, it's so much about throwing people outside of what's comfortable for them. Outside of our comfort zone is where the realm of possibility exists.
Yep.
And that's where, if you want a new experience in life, you want a new relationship, a new career, you want to make more money, you want to be a better leader, it's all going to require you to step outside of what's known and what's comfortable for you. So I think like, and like, as I do with my clients, I'm also doing my own work with my own coach. And like, man, I am so freaking far out of my comfort zone to feel like I'm in it right now. It's like, what is actually in it? But, I'd probably say being on stage, playing music, like commanding a presence, in my self-development work and as the work as a coach, I'm also a leader, right? Like you mentioned, I'm the president of ICF Chicago. I serve on a couple of nonprofit boards as well. And it's all places I get to practice being a leader. And being a leader it's a big task. It's a big opportunity. It's a big call forward to step into who I know and think myself to be. Right. And at times it's like super uncomfortable. And like prior to that, my corporate job, I was a director of operations. I led teams of over 200, having very hard conversations every single day, hiring, firing, getting the most out of really high performing functioning people. Like I'm the guy I had to come in and tell them to do more. Right. So, I think it's like, what's in my comfort zone is leading, right? Leading a charge. Like you mentioned before, I lead the Alchemy of Men group. Mm-hmm. My buddy Alex and I were leading this retreat, and it's, I would say that it's being at the forefront, right? Being out, leading change, leading a different conversation. I think it's something that's probably inside my comfort zone that might not be in everyone else's.
Yeah. I don't
always like it. I hate it more than I like it.
Yeah, of course. I would say, Bob, I don't usually give this to the guests because, quite frankly, I don't always know the answer, except when I had my wife on. Plug for episode 1, season 3 this season. The thing that I think one of your superpowers is being willing to go in on hard questions for men specifically. Like looking at the things for men that most out in the, I don't want to call it the real world, but these are not questions that you address in a corporate context, or quite frankly, even in like most religious organizations. These are just not things that you address as men. So I think that's one of your superpowers, and thing that you are, like I said, may not be completely comfortable, but you are willing to do. So let's take a look at the flip side of that. What's something that you are just, nope, it's outside of your comfort zone, and that other people love it?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I'm kind of, down for whatever, right? Like I'm kind of always open to experiences, but trying to think, maybe it's,
I have one for you.
Go ahead.
Coming up with an answer to this question on a podcast.
That could be one. I immediately thought like, oh, like hanging out with my in-laws for more than like 4 days.
Yeah, I think that's outside of a lot of people's comfort zones. I'm very fortunate. That's my in-law. I have one in-law. She's fantastic if she's listening.
Yep.
So I'm very fortunate. That is inside my comfort zone for sure. But it's very situational.
Totally. Yeah. Setting is so important. But
yes.
I mean, I love my in-laws, you know, and there's a time limit, right? There's a whole family dynamic that I get thrust into when I'm with them that I didn't grow up with. I didn't have years and years of experience with, and how to navigate and be with, and like kind of what my role is in that. And, you know, a lot of the work I do is relational. It's relationship work. And that's just one of the places that's uncomfortable for me, because I'm totally in the unknown. I don't know how to act. I'm going to say the word power, but not like in a power dynamic, but I don't have access to like who I am as a man and like a leader and a husband and a father. It's like, I'm just kind of one of the kids that's getting bossed around, told what to do. And I'm just like, how dare you? Don't you know who I am? So my righteousness gets thrust up.
There you go.
Yeah, I would say like, it's a great question, man. Cause I don't really think about it. And I haven't thought about it in this way, but yeah, it's like being with my in-laws for an extended period of time is a place that's outside of my comfort zone for sure.
Yeah. That's a great question. That's the first time I've asked 100. I was telling you, I want to say this is episode 140 that I've recorded. That's the first time I've heard that one, which it's funny because that's actually something that you would think a lot of people would say.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah. They want it like, I mean, it's honest, it's vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Like to say it, right. Oh my God, what if they're listening? I can't say that. Right. So, you know, if they were listening, yes, I love you. I love you very dearly. And it's also, you know, it requires a level of openness to share in that way. Like, man, I feel like I'm lost sometimes. Like I don't have access to who I know myself to be in this family dynamic at times. Yeah.
Bob, I don't know if you consider this good news or bad news, but I'm just going to say it out loud.
All right.
You do realize that someday when your son's on a podcast, this will be his answer, or his partner, this will be his answer, except those in-laws will be you and your wife.
I know, bro. I know. I know.
You have a young child, just like we have a young child. So it's so part of out of the purview of like, oh wow, this little human is someday going to actually, likely statistically, they're going to be married or have a domestic partner, and it's statistically probable they're going to have a family.
Yep.
And then we're going to be the in-laws for somebody, and it's likely they're going to feel the same way.
Right. Yeah, and I always, I guess my commitment is to have the like dynamic, the experience that my son gets to have in our family, as one as being open and creative, and he gets to be curious and explore and all that. And man, there's many times where I've heard like my mom's voice come out of my mouth, or, like there's this version of me. I'm like, who just said that? Right. And I can already see where, it's a challenge. Parenting is the hardest job I've ever had. And since becoming a father, I have so much more compassion for parents, and especially my own, like having, we had Forrest Forrest is my son's name. We had Forrest when I was 45. So, my mom didn't get to be a grandma until, just recently. And it's given like our whole family a whole new purpose, and it's helping us heal and explore and connect in ways that we haven't done in a long time, or if ever. And it's like, it's like I said, just given me that kind of different view to look at, whoa, my mom did the best she could with what she had.
Yeah.
Like my father did the best he could with what he had. My stepdad did the best he could with what he had. Yeah, I love that, Bob.
Yeah. Perspective. And it also, when you have the little grandkids, it helps you all realize, oh, we need to behave.
They're always watching, man.
They're always watching.
They're always watching.
They're like little spies. They're like, they're like around the corner. Their ears are perked up. They're like so tuned to their environment. They're much closer in some ways to what I would say like a dog or something, in terms of like, like dogs, especially they're very in tune to the environment all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Most dogs I know, they go around. It's like kids. They like, I guess that gets trained out of you as a human. As you start to get older, you start to have higher filters for things. But the little, your son is really close to the same age as my son. the dude is like, he's everywhere and hears everything, and he tries to repeat things, and like he wants to do all the same things that we do. And it's a ton of fun, but also got to be careful. So
yeah, I mean, he's always watching and learning, and like he's at the age, he's just a little over 2, and he's just starting to pick up on the nuances of being human and being in relationship and cause and effect. Yeah, what's that?
Manipulate his parents.
Yeah, how to manipulate his parents. Oh my God, that was like our morning. If you could have saw our morning, it was a freaking disaster. He was going nuts. My wife's trying to like mother him in, like the nurturing, protective, strong way. And I'm over here like, let's just shut the kid up, like let's just try to have a good morning. And it was just like a complete disaster. And everyone's just like,
it's almost like you and I had the exact same morning this morning. That's exactly what happened.
Bro, it feels so good to hear that. Cause like, I think when you're in it, like more parents need to talk about how awful it is to be a parent. I'm just going to say it. More people need to talk about how hard it is. All the challenges.
It's not for everybody. You don't need to do it. Man. You don't have to. You don't have to have. The other thing I'll say about this too, and I'm sure you and I could soapbox this for the next 35 minutes.
Sure.
You don't need to have multiple kids. Nobody says an only child is a bad thing. I like my wife is an only child. My dad's an only child. They're amazing people. There's nothing wrong with having a bunch of siblings, and there's nothing wrong with parents that go, you just want one. Cool. You do you, bro, because like it's your life. But like really quickly before we move on, and I've talked about Charlie on this podcast. This is my podcast, so of course I'm going to talk about a little bit about my kids.
Yeah.
His mode of operation in the morning is when I get him, we got up early this morning, and I like to take him for a long walk with the dog, and we have the best time. He's at the chattering age where he doesn't really make sense, but he knows what he's saying. We laugh, we listen like the Grateful Dead, and we're like on the phone, and it's amazing. And then we walk in the house, and suddenly it's mama, and then he hears her come down, and I'm like, how did he just go from the morning we had where we're like two dudes hanging out, loving each other, to like he's slamming his head on the floor and crying, God. And then of course like the manipulation is real, and I tell my wife Kirsten, I said, he's manipulating you right now. He wants your attention. Don't give it to him when he's acting this way. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, dude, that 100% have had that exact experience on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
It feels so good just to hear another guy explain it. Well, thank you for helping me not feel alone in that. Like, no, God. I'm like, man, I told my wife 2 nights ago, we're kind of having a heart to heart in bed, like right before bed, when, that's when you have those important conversations, right? When you're trying to go to bed. But I was just like,
yeah, that's the best time for sure.
Yeah. I was
when
like,
you're both really tired and have had a long day. That's it.
I'm like, sometimes it's just easier when you're not here. She's like, that breaks my heart. And I'm like, well, it is, and it's like that reason, like we're just broing out, having a good time, playing, eating, running around. And then he sees mom, and it's just like, he gets possessed by a demon.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I don't know if that's maybe some leftover biological trait for survival, but
yeah.
Oh, good. I mean, I'm glad I'm not alone in that. Thank you.
You're definitely not alone. I'll bet you if we had some other mutual friends from the group, they'd be like, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So Bob, let's talk a little bit about speaking, and you're a man with many powerful, bold messages. You've been through a lot. After the break, we're going to actually spend a little bit of time talking about the journey that you and your wife went through, which is unbelievable story that ended up on national news. What if you had 5 minutes and everybody in the world was listening to this podcast? First of all, I'd be doing it from a yacht or on Mars or something, because I'd be the richest person ever if I had 7 billion listeners. I don't, unfortunately. What would you talk to us about, and what would be your call to action to us?
Man, never underestimate the power of love and hope, and the power of positivity. I think that speaks to mindset, which is so important what we do as coaches. And it also speaks to belief, what you believe and know to be possible for you in your life. And I think if you can align both those things, action and mindset, miracles happen. And a miracle did happen.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that after the break.
Yeah, man.
So I'm in the audience. I believe in the same thing. People in the audience listening here, or that you give this speech somewhere, what do you want us to do, to tangibly do with that?
I think to notice where you spend most of your time thinking, right? And thoughts become things, right? there's that awesome saying that you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with, right?
Yeah.
And I like to add to that, you're the average of the 5 thoughts that you typically think.
Oh man,
right?
I love that.
Yeah. So if you wake up every day and you're like, oh man, I don't want to do this, or work is hard, or I'm so tired, or oh man, I don't want to have to talk to that person, or God, I gotta go do this thing again. Like, notice that, right? Notice like where the themes of your thoughts typically are, and are they supporting the experience of life that you want?
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, and there's like scientific research about that, how your brain's wired. Your brain is lazy as hell. Your brain wants to create the quickest area from point A to B. So
sure,
your brain wants to it does rewire so your thoughts don't have to take much energy. So if you're constantly thinking in this negative mindset, it's gonna the neuroplasticity of your brain, it's gonna grow those connections so well that you don't have to put much energy into it, and it just creates this loop.
Yep.
And you're in this constant negative mindset. So like working on your mindset, and the way I do that is actually become the watcher. Watch what you're actually thinking and name it out.
Wow.
Well, I just thought I was a failure. Well, I just thought my wife's a big jerk. Or, well, I thought that person's a loser. Or I had a judgment about that person. Or, man, I'm really worried about finances, or whatever it is. And start to become the watcher of your thoughts.
I love that. That is a good place to go to a commercial break. And for those who don't like to pay attention to commercials, maybe you can watch your thoughts on what you think about the commercial, or how this episode's been so far. I know I was present too. That's mind blowing to actually name your thoughts. Before we go to the commercial break, Bob, tactically, do you write them down? Do you say them out loud to somebody else? Do you just how do you do? What's your mechanism for doing that?
Yeah, I mean, if you want bonus points and to get an A+, write them down, and you know, not in an app. Like literally take pen to paper. I don't know why, but there's more power to that. There's more power to it. I don't know what's behind it, but energetically, I know it. I know it with my clients. I know it within myself. Once you put pen to paper, there's something extra there. So write it down. But first, like, you have to separate it. Like, you are not those thoughts. And we so wrap ourselves up with identifying with those thoughts that we are that loser. We are that failure. We are that fear, right? And we're not. We're just having that experience. And once you can separate that, then you can start writing it down.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll be right back after this.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Bob. So usually at this point in the show, I ask this question: what do you want the audience to know about you? And you know that we've already pre-discussed. I think the answer to this question would probably be the thing that I've asked you to share anyway. So this is my agenda, which I generally don't, but it's just such a fascinating story. And it was big news. Yeah. And so if you'd be willing to share with us I know you shared this story with like Tamron Hall, so you're probably willing to share it here on my show, which is the second largest media outlet you've ever been on. Obviously,
it is. It
is for sure. So
I mean, after CBS, Good Morning America, the Daily Show.
After that, we're here. So Bob, I'd love if you would just maybe take 10 minutes and share with us this story of you and your wife and your son, because it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as we already shared, I'm a father of a little over a 2-year-old boy who, I want to preface this whole story that he is completely healthy. He's completely whole. He is miraculous. And the thing I think your listeners to know, and what I'm most proud of is I'm a father of a miracle. I'm a father of a miracle baby. And when my wife had tried for about a year to get pregnant, and we were kind of coming to the terms of, maybe it's not going to happen, or maybe we need to, start bringing in the medical community to support us in creating a child. And we didn't even know if we wanted that. We were kind of at the point like, well, let's try. And if it happens, cool. And if it doesn't happen, at least we tried. Like we almost couldn't make the decision fully that we wanted to have children. We were, both getting up there. I was 45. She was 41, 42. And it was just something we didn't know that was going to happen for us. And my whole life, like I resisted being a father. I know that now because I was just scared. I was scared to bring another life into this world. So, for me to get to the point of even like, hey, let's see what happens was a big step. And, long story short, like literally like the week before we were going to like look at next steps, my wife woke me up on a Saturday morning. She's like, hey, I want to tell you something. I have something for you. I'm like, can we talk when I wake up? Stop bugging me, lady. And
she's like, it's mildly important.
Yeah. The whole bed was shaking because she was shaking. Yeah. And she wrapped up a present, and it was the positive pregnancy test. And I was like, what? And it's so weird to like, I've spent my entire life trying to not get someone pregnant.
Right.
And then to have it finally happen, you're like, is this real?
Right.
Did this actually happen? And, I ended up making her take like 2 or 3 pregnancy tests
of course,
a couple of days because I didn't believe it. So
we did the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we had, so the pregnancy was progressing, and we had a couple bumps here and there, and, there were just some complications here and there, but nothing super major. And then on the anniversary of 5 months being pregnant, we started putting the nursery together. Like I've heard that, once you get to 5 months, like coast is clear, you're going to have this baby, nothing to worry about. And, my wife went out and ran some errands, and I was putting together, just rearranging things. And she calls me, she's like, something's going on. Something's not right. Like, I think my water maybe broke. And I was like, what? And I was like, and in my mind, I'm like, she just peed herself. Like she's freaking out. She's just being over dramatic. She just peed herself, And, she came home, and we were kind of like, oh, now what? And then, she had like another like release of fluid essentially. And I was like, oh man, this ain't great. And I have a background as a registered nurse. And,
so you have a medical training. Yeah. You have a lot of training
like,
this. Yeah.
This isn't good. 5 months, my wife's water breaks. So we called our midwives. They're like, yeah, you probably just peed yourself. And like, we kept pushing, and they're like, well, why don't you come in? And the caveat to all this is this also happened not only on our 5-month anniversary or 5-month pregnancy anniversary, it also happened on the day that Chicago shut down because of coronavirus, where everything just was like shut down. Like no one's on the street.
Yeah, it's scary.
Businesses are shut. Like public transportation's not running. It was like a ghost town, and getting into the hospital was like getting into Fort Knox. It was like a episode of Outbreak, right? Yeah. Like we were trying to like get in, and like we're being looked at like we're the Walking Dead, like we're the carriers of the plague, right? Yeah. And like we're like scared. We don't know what's going on. So we get up there, they keep running a bunch of tests. They kind of come back inconclusive. And then we were there from like 5 o'clock until 2 a.m. And like around 1, 2 a.m, they're like, your water broke. They did an ultrasound, like the baby's heart's still beating, but you're going to lose this child. Like, and we can help it along. We can schedule a termination right now, so you can, begin your healing. And if you guys want to try getting pregnant again, you can in a couple months, but this baby's not going to make it. And we're like, we can't make that decision right now. We cannot and who the hell are we to make that decision? Like we can't, like, what are our other options? They're like, well, you can go home and wait. And what will most likely happen is that you'll go into labor or get an infection. Both mean that you'll deliver the baby and the baby will pass away. Yeah. So, we were devastated. We went home, just tried to sleep through the night.
Just the two of you.
Just the two of us. Yeah. No. Jeez. Yeah. Like we can't even, like, our family are like the carriers of the plague. Like we're scared of them too. So, so we called her OB. She's like, came in, the baby's heart's still beating. The baby was moving. And, the tone of everyone that we talked to was so conciliatory. It was just like, we're so sorry. God, this really sucks. Blah, blah, blah. And we're like, is this baby going to die? like, is this baby like not going to make it? And she's like, it's so unlikely. She's like, there's less than 1% chance that your son will survive. Or we didn't even know it was our son, like that your baby will survive.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is there any chance that it could? And she's like, it would take a miracle. Like it would literally take a miracle.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I looked at my wife. I'm like, we're going to work on a miracle. So, we went home, and then, again, like pandemic, we can't even get groceries. We're freaking out.
Right.
Like, we're in like the most grievous time of our lives. Our hearts are just shattered. We're so scared. And, day by day, the baby kept hanging on. And, we're talking to maternal fetal medicine doctors. We're talking to OB. We're talking to all kinds of folks. And they're like, you're going to lose the baby. And even if the baby survives, it's going to be so riddled with medical conditions that its quality of life is going to be awful.
That's because the amniotic fluid protects the fetus from a lot of, and it nourishes the body as it's growing.
Yeah. It does. One, it protects. Two, it nourishes, and three, it helps with development. So the babies like swallow and, practice like breathing in the fluid, which helps them grow their lungs, right? It helps with their development. So one of the big things that happens when babies who have low or no amniotic fluid is that their lungs can't develop. So they come out and they can't breathe, right? Yeah. So day and day goes by, and they're like, if you can get to 23 weeks, so 3 weeks from the time it happened, we'll admit Shauna, my wife, and we'll do whatever we can for this baby. So we're like, all right, let's get the first miracle. Let's get the 23 weeks.
Yeah.
And then boom, we got it. And then it was like, let's get the 24 weeks. Because once you get to 24 weeks, the viability of the baby goes from like 10% to like 70%. Like literally a day at a time, the odds of this baby surviving go up extraordinarily.
And also, he could have passed away on any of those days.
Anytime. So we're like, anytime we'd go in for like an ultrasound, we're just like, oh my God, is there heartbeat? Okay. And like, is he growing? Like, yes. And here he was, his heart keeps beating. He's actually growing in my wife's womb with no amniotic fluid.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I'll say, like when she got finally admitted, we're like, let's find out the sex of the baby. And I believe this might sound a little out there, but I believe that our baby being a son is what saved, being a boy, having a penis is what saved his life. And, this might get a little woo-woo, but when my wife was pregnant, when we were like just thinking about names and before all this happened, I had a lot of real strong like baby girl energy. I'm pretty sensitive to like energies and relationships with people in my life. And I just felt really strong baby girl energy. I was convinced we were having a baby girl. And then when this happened, and we even named her, her name is Yara. Yara was going to be our daughter's name.
Mm-hmm.
And when this happened, I believe that the spirit of our daughter came in and switched places with Forrest, our son's name. Now, call me crazy, whatever, but like, I feel like that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And what actually saved our baby's life, one of the things I think did, well, I won't get there yet, but so he was sitting breech in my wife's womb, which like his butt was at her uterus, his legs were up, and his penis was pointing right in his face. So amniotic fluid is essentially a baby's urine.
Right.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
This is so amazing.
So since my son had a penis, he got to direct where the fluid was going. I mean, probably not intentionally, but it was going up towards his face.
Yeah.
So any amniotic fluid that he could create, he was getting, and it was getting into his face. And that's what helped him develop his lungs.
It's unbelievable.
It's crazy. It's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
So anyway, my wife gets admitted. We find out that she's on the 4th floor and she's got a window looking out of a courtyard. And I'm like, what else am I going to do? Like, can I come see you? Like, I just want to see you through the window. I'm sick of seeing you.
Because you can't go in there because of the pandemic.
COVID restrictions. No, you can't go in there. And this is like Fort Knox, like unless you had to be like bleeding out and dying to get admitted to the hospital.
Right.
So they weren't going to let some, father in for whatever reason. So I started sitting outside her window. I'd grab a chair. I just sit out and we talk. over the phone. And I started making signs like, love you, keep going, proud papa. And someone from hospital administration walked by and she thought I was like a union striker or something. I was out there like striking and like, we need safer conditions or whatever. And I was like, no, I was like, my wife's actually up there. And I told her about what happened. She's like, oh my God. And she's like, you just come here and sit. And I go, yeah, I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Well,
you can't possibly be working or anything when there's no way you'd be in this mental space.
Right. Yeah. This. I mean, I had like when the pandemic hit, I like had a bunch of my corporate clients like freak out and they were like, we need to pause. And then, my client load dropped, quite extensively. So like, I had 2 or 3 clients I was working with, which was actually a place for me to like get sourced, like on my coaching calls with my clients, like really helped and supported me. Cause I got to like pull that, put my energy into something else. Right.
Yeah.
So, I'd sit out there. So they ended up running a story about the husband who'd come sit at the hospital in the internal hospital newspaper. And the next thing I know, a local news station is contacting me like, hey, can we run a story on you? And I was like, yes, sure. I would love to. I'm not doing much else. I'm going to be here anyway. So they came out, did a beautiful segment on us. The next day, ABC affiliates, which is like national, got a hold of the story and they wanted to run it. And, all of a sudden I have producers from New York, California calling me, like wanting to hear about the dad who's sitting outside during COVID to like, support his wife and baby. And then, like the next day it went global.
Yep.
Like I was getting interviewed in Japan. There's like an awesome Japanese interview. Like
Japanese interviews are the best.
Oh my God, dude. So like their voiceover for me was like, I can't do it, but I'm so good.
So
like,
good.
The gruffness of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like 30 different countries we were in, every major news network, like multiple stories, like hundreds of stories. And what was so beautiful about that was more people got to put energy into our baby and energy into our story. And if people prayed, they were praying for us. And if people wanted to help, they were like, throwing us money, giving us some financial support so we could put everything into this experience. And 108 days from water breaking until Forrest came home. And he came home at 5 pounds, tiny.
Yeah.
Tiny. And like here, we went through this whole experience. He spent 20 days in the NICU, sailed right through it. He kicked so much ass in the NICU. The doctors were like, we have no idea how this kid's doing it. And I'm like, I do. He's a miracle, and the whole world, got behind him to have this.
Right.
And it was just miraculous when he got here. And through that whole experience, there were so many signs from spirit, so many signs from the universe, so many signs that like we were all going to be okay. And it was all going to work out. And that number 108 it's a very significant spiritual number. There's a lot of mysticism and connection to that number. If you have mala beads and like the real mala beads, there's 108 beads. So like Google and look up the number 108. And I was like, of course it was that, of course it was that, just like the connection and the mysticism and all that came with it. And yeah, man, it was such a whirlwind. And I think like, we went through it and then boom, like we're new parents to this little tiny baby, still alone because we can't see anyone
during COVID. Right. Yeah.
During COVID. And, now he's a preemie and like, there's even more concerns and restrictions about him getting sick. And, man, it was like a gauntlet. It was the hardest thing my wife and I mean, we're still recovering from it over 2 years ago.
Oh, sure.
Like we almost didn't make it. And we're like, we have a whole toolbox of tools, through our coaching work. My wife's also a coach. We know how to have hard conversations together. We know how to love each other through difficult times. And there are times where like, we're just like, are we going to make it?
Yeah.
And it, it was hard. It was really, really hard. And, I think it, like I said before the break, like, the whole opportunity here was to, what you think becomes a thing, right? Like where you put your energy, it'll grow. Right. And we put so much energy and focus into saving this baby's life that along the way, we kind of forgot to do that for ourselves.
Yeah.
And one of the core tenets in any of the work that we do with our relationship couples is you have to put yourself first. You have to fill your cup first, nurture yourself as an individual first, before you can even bring your healthiest, best version into another relationship with relationship with another human being.
Yeah.
So, and we were both on empty. Now we got this little baby that's like, just like feeding.
Takes
and
a
then
lot of
there's
work.
then there's like the letdown of like having the whole world in your back pocket fighting for you, and then it's just like, we have no one to help us change this baby's diaper at 4 a.m.
Yeah. Man.
So yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. If you Google my name or date night dad, there's like a bazillion stories about it. Yeah. That'll be
amazing,
fun to
Bob.
read.
What a story, man. I wonder if Forrest can ever do anything to have you appreciate him less after that story. Like, it must just be, we've had 2 pretty normal pregnancies.
Yeah.
And every parent loves their kid, but like, no matter what he ever does, you must just be like, dude, man, like, and like, are you excited to tell, like, when he's old enough to understand, what a amazing thing to tell him and show him these videos, like, what a legacy.
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Like, I don't want to tell him because then he'll probably use it, like, use it for powers of evil. I'm a miracle. You can't tell me what to do. I'm a miracle. But I mean, like yes and no, man. Like, it's hard. Like, I'll look at him and I'll be like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Like, I hate being a father. I hate it.
Yeah.
And then I'll like, the next minute I'll be like, this is the best thing I've ever done. I love being a father. I've always been a father.
Which sounds very human.
Yeah, man. And it's like, there's a realness and authenticity to that. Like,
yeah,
it's really hard. And enough people don't talk about how hard it is. Right. And it's like, I so appreciate him. There's times I look at him, and it's like, how did you do it? How did you beat every odd, not only to survive, but then come out completely normal? Right.
Yeah.
Even if he survived, he had like a 95% chance he'd have like a trach, a breathing apparatus device, or have like a, feeding tube, something. Right. And he's totally fine and normal. And then like, God, how did he do it? And other times, like this morning, I'm just like, I cannot wait to drop you off at daycare because I can't stand you. Right. And it's such like it's such a yin yang dichotomy of being, and it's like, I just had to accept that, it's part of my own humanity. It's okay to be challenged or have hard thoughts about the thing you love most in the world. And it's like, it's just part of being human.
Yeah. Are you a Star Wars fan at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what quote I'm thinking? I think you know what I'm thinking, don't you? As it relates to this story, very famous.
I was like, "You are not my father."
No. Well, I think we know that that's not it. No, C-3PO, Empire Strikes Back. They're in the Millennium Falcon. C-3PO's. We have a 0.23% chance of surviving this asteroid field. Han Solo's one of the greatest quotes in the history movies. Never tell me the odds.
Oh yeah, totally.
That's Forrest. He's like, y'all can keep talking out there. This is going to happen. Yeah.
The other like quote I hear is from Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah.
When he's like trying to date the dork's trying to date the hot woman. She's like not in. She's like, it would be a one in like a million chance that I would ever go out with you. And he's like, so you're saying I've got a chance? It's like, that's it, man. And how much do we not bet on ourselves when it's like 50-50 chance we might fail, right? I'm not doing it, right? Yeah. Or even like a 25% chance you may flop, like I'm not doing it, right? Yeah. And it's such a good conversation to have, is like, man, what would happen if you were to bet on yourself?
Yeah.
Or bet on the things you love most. Like, what could be possible in your life, in your relationships, in your career, if you leaned into the possibility, as bleak or as minor as it may seem. Yeah. And that's where I talk about, if you were to pour your love and your hope into that and remain positive, that power of positivity, with all of that, like miracles are going to happen.
Yeah, man. There's no way he survived by chance. There's just no way.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's a perfectly healthy child, like I was doing the math, which I'm not a math person. I'm like 1% chance of surviving, and then a 5% chance of being healthy. It is really a minuscule number that comes out.
Bro, totally.
Yeah. Like is he in medical journals and such now? Is your case been written up as like or is it not just viewed as like it's because it's not scientific? That's why, right? It's like,
that's it. Like they can't even like the doctors would come in and they'd be like, he's rewriting the textbooks. Like none of this makes sense.
Unreal.
Like none of this, he should not be breathing as well as he is. He never needed oxygen. They were like getting ready to do all these procedures on him, and like everyone had to pause and be like, he doesn't need it. And like day 3 in the NICU, he like got kicked out to like the step down where all he had to do was gain weight. They're like, we just need to fatten this kid up and he can go home. And we were just like, how? You know, and the doctors were like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
I've never seen this in my career.
Yeah. This cannot be explained by science. Well, the cool thing is now, I'm sure you know this as we start to wrap up, is you also have given these medical professionals a story. So the next time this happens, they're like, we actually know of somebody that's happened. So you have given other people hope.
Yeah, man.
By the fact that this is that the people know you and Shauna and Forrest exist. Amazing story. I like when I had you on, I'm like, we could do the normal format, but I think this is going to be much more powerful and interesting. I mean, I like my format, but this is such a cool story, Bob.
Yeah,
so thanks for sharing.
It felt good. Yeah, it felt good.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for being all, just like thanks for bringing the truth around all of it. Yeah. All right, so let's wrap up and talk a little bit about what you're up to in the world, because you do all sorts of cool stuff, including the thing that I mentioned at the beginning that I've been a part of. So you really. It's funny for those listening, if you don't know Bob and you see him, you would not think that he's like a sensitive, like he's like a guy who wears black. He's got guitars. You look like a wrestler, football player, heavy metal guy. And I mean that, and I think that's super cool. Yeah. Bob's from getting to know you, you're like really in touch with like your, I didn't call it your feminine side. You're just like really in touch with what it means to be a man all the way around, not just the alpha masculine energy. And you do a lot of work with that, and you and your wife do a lot of work with couples. So let's talk for a couple minutes about, kind of what you're up to now that you're back making money in your business and you're not sitting outside a hospital. Yeah. What do you spend your time doing? Yeah, I can make a difference in other ways. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's 3 main things I'm up to right now. One is, as you know, is the Alchemy of Men coaching groups. It's a container for men to focus on their own growth, discover what might be missing in their life, gain clarity on their goals, define what purpose means to them, and create a life with some intention, with like creating life on purpose. And one of the coolest things that happens in this container is it just provides a space for men to open up and be real. I think so many of us suffer from a lone wolf syndrome. Like, I got it. I don't need you. I'm on my own. Like, this self-sufficiency is like golden. And like, it's done so much damage to masculinity and to men. And like, we're yearning for that brotherhood, that connection with other men and being in conversations that matter. And this container is just one place to do that. And it's just super cool. We focus on the alchemical experiments, which is the precursor to chemistry, ancient, mysterious, spiritual type of science. And we just translate that into self-development work, and it's been really cool. The other thing that has got going on well is the Alchemy of Men retreat, which I'm co-hosting with my brother, buddy, Alex Terranova. And and fellow podcast guest on this show from a few weeks ago. Yeah, the Dream Mason. Alex is great. Yeah, we're taking 15 guys into the woods, and we're gonna, create and have these conversations that matter. And the core tenet or question we're asking is, what does being a man mean to you? And I think there's so much out there that tells us what we should be, or who we should be, or how we should act as men. And we're actually tossing it to a choose your own adventure. Like, you get to say, and you get to discover if that works for you, and if not, like, what would? Right. And we're going to talk about spirit. We're going to talk about sexuality. We're going to talk about success, what that actually means. So that's an awesome container, all inclusive. It's going to be badass. We're going to finally. Is there any conversations about NFC North football teams? I'm sure we'll talk about sports for guys, but Chicago Bears are the number one force in the NFC. So we want to just keep it that way.
Just whatever. Make sure it's not the Vikings or the Packers, Lions or whatever. But anyway, and then the third thing I'm up to is I'm the co-founder of the Living and Love Incubator, and the other founder is my incredible, amazing, gorgeous goddess of a wife, Shauna.
Called the brains behind the operation.
She's the brain. She's all of it.
The beauty and the brains. She's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. We support couples and singles in creating intentional relationships. We teach people how to be in relationship. We coach people through challenging, difficult times. One of the things that had us start this was, in so many of the clients that we talk to, we would talk about goal setting, and there'd be goals in health and fitness. There'll be goals in money. There'll be goals in career and business. And then when it came to relationship, it was like, huh?
Yeah.
Like no one sets relationship goals. So we're like, we want to be the champions of that. And that's so much of what we do. And again, like there's no relationship school. We learn relationship from what we were modeled, which is not always the greatest, or how we think it should be, which is not always accurate. Right. Yeah. So, nice. We get to have our folks create what they want in relationship and, have that container along the way. So
I am sure that is a powerful thing. Like with you and your wife, I don't know your wife, but I've seen your posts and everything. It looks like you two have a great partnership, and I can only imagine based on the training and what you've been through and what you all both know, what you bring to that container. Amazing, Bob. All right. So we're going to wrap up with some quick words of wisdom fitted on an Instagram post. What do you want to leave us with?
Ooh, that's a good one. What do I want to leave you with? What is my ounce of wisdom? I think, especially directed towards men, is if you're feeling lost or stuck or confused, like look at discovering your purpose while you're on this planet, and look at the values that'll help drive you towards that purpose. And those two things are foundational in creating a fulfilling life. So many of us go after success as the way to fulfillment, the cash and prizes, and then we get there and we find ourselves, missing out on something. So, double down on why you're here and what you're here to do, and just watch the magic happen.
Amazing. Thanks so much for being on, Bob. It was a real pleasure. I'm glad we made this happen.
Yeah, so good, man.
And we'll obviously stay very connected. And everybody, please go follow Bob. Check out the website. We'll have all that stuff in there. And just keep doing what you're doing. It's such important work. And also, when he's old enough, we need to get Forrest back on this podcast.
Yeah, he'll come on.
You two are the star, but we need to talk to the real miracle. You two are just like the bearers of it. Here's the DNA.
We're just the lackeys behind.
Just the lackeys, exactly. All right, Bob. Thank you so much.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. All right, man.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.